I do tell people, like, just imagine if every day at work you were dealing with like the most important day of someone's life. It's a big responsibility and it does get a little stressful sometimes.
You're listening to the Venue RX podcast.
What's up, everyone? Jonathan here with the Venue RX, and on this show we are passionate about documenting and sharing best practices around owning, managing, and operating world-class wedding venues. And today we have one of our Venue Owner Series shows, and I love these because we get to connect with venue owners all over the country and really get into the nitty-gritty of what it means to run a wedding venue, what the day-to-day is like operating a venue, and the origin stories of how these venues started, and sometimes the trials and travails and the different things that have happened in the journey of making them what they are today. And so on this specific show today, we have someone who I've been excited about talking about. We actually rescheduled a couple of times, but I'm very happy and excited to welcome Amanda Peoples to the show. Thank you so much for being here, Amanda.
Hi, thank you. I'm excited.
Well, I'm excited too. Your venue in North Carolina is absolutely stunning. Could you kind of start with just giving us a quick picture? What's your venue name? Where are you located? And then we'll get into your origin story here in just a second.
Yeah, so we're in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're located on about 20 acres is the main part of our wedding venue. And I think it's really nice because we're on 20 acres and we're only about 15 minutes outside of the heart of like downtown Raleigh. So it's a nice quick commute, but you do feel quite removed from the hustle and bustle and you get a lot of privacy. So that works really well. So we're Walnut Hill in Raleigh.
I love that. I say this for anyone who's listening on the podcast, because I know we have a lot of podcast listeners who are just on the audio side. We are going to link, like we normally do, the links to Walnut Hill. It is stunning. And I was just saying before we got on the website, you've done such an incredible job. You designed the website yourself, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah. So I have redone the website about 3 times now, I think. I Googled just kind of how to build a website when we first opened and figured it out. And from then, redone it a couple times as I kind of honed in on the branding I really wanted. I still don't totally understand branding. But yeah, just kind of figuring it all out. And it is a very tedious thing to do, building a website, but it is fun. And once you kind of get it all together, kind of getting to see what you create, very much like a wedding venue, it is nice to see it all come together.
Totally. Well, and I'm excited to hear your origin story, like how you got into this business. That fascinates me. And, clearly you have an eye for design. The website, like I said, is gorgeous and it really showcases your venue really well. But take us back. How long have you guys been in business and how did you get started?
Yeah, so we started doing weddings in 2019. Before that, it was just our family property. So like I said, the venue itself is on 20 acres, but our family owns about 400 acres in the area as well. Some of that is farmland, and we do still actively farm. But this piece of land was just our family property. My dad built what is now our estate house back in 1990. And we just stayed out there in the summers. When I was a kid, this part of Raleigh was very, very rural. The road was actually a dirt road. There were no stores nearby. It was really hard to get into downtown Raleigh and central Raleigh. So we stayed out there in the summers, and it was just my favorite place to be. As we grew up, the outer Beltline kind of extended and was able to bring a lot more stuff out there. So now we can get to everything within like 10 minutes. My husband actually built a house out here now, and my dad was like, I don't think you want to live out there. And I was like, you're thinking of it 30 years ago. It's going to be fine. We lived here for 2 years. We absolutely love it. And yeah, so all of a sudden though, how we kind of got started as a wedding venue, because I now own the company. So I think people often think it was my idea, and it was not. Okay. It was actually my dad's idea. My dad one day came to me and he's like, a lot of people in the neighborhood and stuff keep asking us to like host events out here and weddings. So they must like it. There's a need for it. What do you think if we start a wedding venue? And I was just like, okay, I mean, I guess we could, like, we'll just like keep it really small. No one was living in the houses, so they were kind of open to be used for getting ready and things like that. Really, my advice to him was to just rent the property kind of cheaply as is, and if people needed tents, that they could bring that in. I used to work at a rental company locally prior to having our first child, so I just thought that that would kind of be the easiest way to get it off the ground and started.
Totally. Well, and I have a question really quick. What was your professional background? Yeah, I know you mentioned the rental company. What was your professional background kind of prior to this?
Yeah, so I worked in a lot of like different kind of luxury customer service. So I worked, my first job out of college was at the Umstead Hotel and Spa. So that's in Raleigh as well. And that's like the only 5-star hotel in the area. It's really beautiful, wonderful place to just stay at, have a staycation. A lot of people in town like to go there. I love to go there still. It was super fun. I loved working in a hotel, actually. It's a really great sense of like camaraderie. But when I worked there, I really learned about that customer service at a very high level. And then I worked at Bailey's Fine Jewelry, which is a family-owned business here in Raleigh. They have just stunning stuff. They specialize in all types of jewelry, custom stuff too. So I worked a lot in the back of house and in the front, like ringing people up and just helping them with all of that. So again, a lot of customer service interaction and how to help people at a pretty high level. So I think all of that really did help translate into my job now that I didn't really expect.
Totally. I love that, hearing how the origin stories, hearing how the past professions and careers of people influence their venue, because, a lot of times it is someone who's a planner or a photographer or, someone who has some piece of that. And it sounds like the customer experience side and kind of that like maybe luxurious feel. And that's definitely what's conveyed, on the website. So I think that's huge. So your dad says, hey, some folks in the area are thinking about this. And at that time, did your family live on the property at all?
No, so no one lived in the main house. My brother, so there's actually 2 houses on property. My brother did actually live in the other house. It's kind of like across our pond. So he lived there, but it wasn't really planning on using that. And it's kind of tucked away from what we thought would be like the main part of the venue. So it kind of didn't really matter. If anything, he could like pop over and help with stuff. So he doesn't live there now. We actually now have both houses available for the wedding party. So both sides of the wedding party get their own house. I think he got sick of people having weddings in his front yard as we grew a little bigger than originally planned.
Totally. Okay, so you're starting in 2019. When was your dad's initial when did this brainchild happen? And then when did you kind of take this torch and start running?
Yeah, I would say that it was probably towards the end of 2017 when he originally started, and he started building what is now our white barn in the beginning of 2018. So he decided to go big, and that's very much like my dad. He also likes to build stuff. So built a nice big reception space, and the tents kind of went out the window. I was like, oh, okay. All of a sudden we're going a little bigger than I thought, but I don't know. To me, it was still the family farm. Like I said, I just had a baby in August of 2017. So juggling that. And I just thought, it's a family farm. It's not going to be that big of a deal. We'll be lucky if we book 10 or 15 weddings our first year. It's not going to be that big of a deal. I'll still stay home with the baby, and this will be a great job to have kind of part-time. Our first year we did 37 weddings.
Oh my gosh. So how did that happen? When you kind of first opened the door, did you pre-sale any of the dates before construction was done? How did that happen?
Yeah, so we did tours before construction was done. We're lucky, we're agritourism because we are part of the working farm. So we did get to start construction a lot quicker than some places that are going to have to go through more extensive permitting. So we didn't have to go through all of that like commercial permitting and things like that. Agritourism, especially North Carolina, does get a little bit of a break on some of that. So we got to start building pretty quickly. So at least when I started tours, we had something up, some form of beams to give a feel for it. And we had the estate house I could show and a lot of the grounds. Maybe not all of the landscaping was done, but it definitely helped give people a good feel for the overall property. And we did book quite a few before everything was complete and opened. And we gave ourselves a nice buffer too, because we didn't have to jump through so many hoops. We were able to really do construction fairly quickly and give like several month buffer to make sure that everything would be completely done before any of those weddings started.
I know for some of the other venue owners that I talk with, when there's a construction timeline and they're trying to do pre-sales, it's like, we better hope that, nothing breaks, nothing takes longer than...
Construction is stressful. I've added more things to the property in years since we opened, and every single time I do it, I am so stressed out, and I tell myself, this is the last thing I'm doing, and then I always do something else anyway. So.
What is your... the first way that you started marketing? Like, how did you start getting couples to view the property?
Oh, well, the first thing we did was the knot and wedding wire.
Okay.
So, which I have mixed feelings on.
Well, and I was going to say now, how is your viewpoint on that changed? Because I assume as you've owned the venue now several years, or you've kind of been, spearheading it, your opinions on, marketing or even your website, you said you changed it a couple times. Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. So knot and wedding wire first, how did that play out?
Yeah, I think that the knot and wedding wire can be a good tool for that first year. It does get you in front of a lot of couples. However, it is extremely expensive. The cost does change based on where you are located. The larger a city you are in, the higher your cost per month is to advertise. The knot and wedding wire are now owned by the same company. So you're essentially paying the exact same company thousands of dollars a month twice to advertise. Once you get semi-established, I personally don't think that you're going to get a lot back that you can't get somewhere else. There's also a lot of chatter about fake leads. You are going to get a ton of price shopping as well. So once you get more established, if you're a venue that is a bit more luxury and a higher price bracket, that's probably not going to be your ideal couple all the time, and you're better putting that money somewhere else. I think if I can remember correctly, just one website was costing us like $9,000 a year.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Oh, so you mean one platform, either wedding wire or the knot. Got it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So back during COVID, we canceled all of our stuff, and even after canceling it, we are booked more than any other year. So it really wasn't doing anything for us. We still have the free listings, which I actually don't think that they offer anymore, unfortunately. We still have those so we can have our reviews up and things like that. But I just think that there are more long-term investments where you can put that money and you're going to get a much better return. If you want to do it for a year, maybe my advice to any venue or any vendor in general who does that is to really look over what contract you sign, look at what the cancellation terms are, and make sure that you follow those, because they will auto-renew you. Yeah.
Yep. I've experienced that at some of the venues that we manage, and you're like, wait, what's going on here? And
yeah, I've seen a lot of people on groups I'm part of getting upset about it. They just didn't know it was going to happen. No one reached out to them. They're auto-renewed at like even a higher rate, and they're having trouble getting out of it. So it's important, just like we always tell, clients to read over their contract. We have to read over the contracts we sign too.
So true, so true. I want to dive a little bit deeper into marketing, but before we do that, just to give us a bit of a context around Walnut Hill and kind of where you guys are at. So 2019 was the first year. Was that the year that you did the 37 weddings?
Yes.
Okay, 37 weddings, COVID comes. I know COVID was handled differently in different states. What a rough entry, right?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you handled that.
Yeah, that was a fun year. Especially it was only our second year in business. So, that first year I felt like I learned so much. It was such a learning building year. I felt like I had gotten so many things kind of straightened out and policies straightened out to really make 2020 such a good year and an easier year. And then the world was just kind of like, just kidding. For us in North Carolina, I would say it was kind of middle of the road for restrictions. There was a pretty significant period of just absolutely no events at the beginning where everything was rescheduled. And then a period of slowly reopening where you could have, smaller events of 50 and things like that before we fully reopen. I want to say it was oh gosh, it's all such a blur. Maybe the late fall or so where things were really starting to open up again and we could really do things into the next year. So one thing that I guess was a bit lucky about it being our second year is we booked 45 weddings for 2020. I actually capped us at 45 weddings. So once we hit 45, I stopped all bookings. That was actually really helpful. So I had dates that I could move people to without having to charge them, that were, acceptable dates. They might not have been exactly the Friday or Saturday, but we could get really comparable, really close and make people really, as happy as possible. And, there were some multiple moves, of course, because at first we, we're like, oh, it's going to be a month. It'll be okay. We'll move you to July. And you get that batch move and you feel good for a bit. And it's no, you just keep scooting everything down. And we also had our second baby in June of 2020.
Oh my gosh. Wait, we have kids that are very similar then, because I have a daughter who was born in May.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So fun times there, having a baby during COVID. So yeah, end of June 2020, we had our second baby. So there was, the stress of trying to guide these couples when, as a venue owner, we really had no guidance. The state was putting out these rules and we were trying to follow them. They were very confusing a lot of the time. And even though they would give these timelines, they really didn't matter because they often changed. Understandably, no one could have predicted this or how it was going to turn out. So we were trying to give guidance, but it was very difficult. And then, getting 4 hours of sleep. Yeah. And having a toddler that could not go to daycare. Daycare shut down and we kept him out and can't go to any parks or anything. It was a little hectic. Out on top of that, 3 days before I actually went into labor with my daughter, our estate house had a major pipe burst. So half of the house had to be ripped down to the studs and redone. So I was fine.
Oh my
totally
God.
fine. So, after that year, everything else, I'll be able to handle it one way or the other. It'll be okay.
Yeah, nothing that gets thrown at you now that will affect you. That's amazing. Okay, so 2020, you're shifting these weddings around. 2022, so this year that we're in right now, how many weddings did you do, or have you, I guess, a couple days left of the year here where we're recording this?
Yep. So we have had 75 weddings this year.
Wow. Awesome.
So we have one more to go. We have our New Year's Eve wedding. I'm very excited about it. They're the nicest couple in the world. I absolutely adore them. I'm going to hire the bride's mom to be my personal hype woman. She's going to pop in on every tour. And if she's there, I'll never lose a booking.
That's so cool. That is so cool. You got to love couples like that, right? Just couples that love the property, they see what it could be, they're already imagining the pictures. Like those tours are really special to go on as well.
Yeah, they're so kind. Just every time I see them, it just makes my day. So we're really lucky. I mean, honestly, most of our couples are just a joy to work with. I mean, I think in this industry, that's what most of it is. It is a wedding day, although it is stressful. It's a happy time, and that's usually how it goes. But I do tell people, like, just imagine if every day at work you were dealing with like the most important day of someone's life. It's a big responsibility, and it does get a little stressful sometimes.
Yeah, I love that perspective though, because when you have that, it's like, okay, this is my day. This is kind of like what I'm choosing to do. And you're taking care of other people on their special day. So it's like every day, just like performing at your best, making sure the venue looks good, making sure the team is set, all of those things. So let's go back to marketing then really quick. So you're doing 75 this year. How many do you have currently booked for next year?
I think we have almost 70 for next year.
Oh, wow. So I know you capped originally that first year, or that was it the second year, you capped it at 45. Obviously you're past that at this point. Are you looking to take on more weddings than you currently have? Or are you kind of closing the books on the 75?
Probably, yeah, 75. I was really happy with that number this year. I felt like we could handle it without getting too overwhelmed. I worked very hard this year at not being at the venue too much on wedding days. Any vendor that knows me and works with me often knows that I am at every wedding. I really think it's important. As the owner, I like to see my couples. I do all of the tours. I'm a main point of contact through the process. And so I like to get to see them on that day. However, I do have a 2 and a 5-year-old, and weddings do happen on the weekends. So my kids are in daycare during the week, so I can work. So then if I'm at your wedding for like 6 or 8 hours, which maybe is what I used to be doing because I'm a control freak, then I just don't see my children. And that is not what I want. It's not what I want for my kids, for my husband, or for me. So I really made this year a big goal to stop in for a couple hours. So I just try when they go down for nap time, I pop over. We live 5 minutes away, actually less than, we live half a mile away from the venue. So it's very easy to get there. And I just pop in for an hour or two, get to say hi to a couple, check on them, check in with vendors and my team and make sure everything's good, and then head home to get to see them.
Got it. What was the process like, or what was your thinking behind how you structured that? Because I know you said, you wanted to take a step back from your venue. How did you take a step back from being there every single day or every single wedding?
Yeah, just having venue managers. That was the biggest thing for us. So we have venue managers that are there starting at noon until the end of the event. Our couples get to arrive at 10 a.m. to start hair and makeup and things like that in the house if they need to. And setup can start as well. We already have tables and chairs preset. So if the coordinator needs to start laying linens or anything like that, they can get started on that. But so our venue manager is there. I work very closely with them. We're all like a family. They care about Walnut Hill as much as I do. Honestly, one of our venue managers actually got married at Walnut Hill, and then I hired her like right after her wedding. So that really helps you. It's hard to find people in this industry because it's such weird hours. But once you do, I just think it's really important. You just treat them really well. I hope my venue managers know, like, I care about them as people more than as employees. And I love them so much. I know their families and they know my kids and things like that. So it just makes it a really wonderful relationship, working relationship. And at the venue, I think our couples can feel that too. So they just take care of it, and they try and take care of me too. They make sure I don't have a mental breakdown.
Well, and that's super important because, since you are there, since you do have, it sounds like a pretty high standard of excellence for how you want things to look and things like that. That's important to be able to give you that break. Talk to me about how you went about finding your venue managers for your property.
Yeah, so Bailey is the one who got married with us, and that's really how I stumbled upon.
Awesome.
She got married at our venue, and we needed to hire another venue manager. And I knew that she was kind of in between jobs at the time. And I just loved her. We got along whenever we had meetings together and stuff like that. So I had kind of like put up a thing on our Instagram, like that we were looking for a venue manager. But then I just reached out to her directly. And I was like, hey, like, are you working right now? Are you in between jobs? She was like, yeah. And I was actually just going to update my resume to send you. So I was like, you're hired. It's a very professional process. But honestly, nothing could have worked out better. Even during COVID, she came over, she babysat our kids for us when I had to work and stuff. She and her husband, Brad, are part of our family forever, no matter what happens. Her husband is a firefighter, and he also works as one of our security officers as well when he's not at the fire station. So I've now hired them both.
That's amazing. So what you're saying is, for any venue owners who are listening or watching this, is like maybe like start thinking about maybe hiring some of your couples. You know, it sounds like you've hired both.
I did, yeah.
You know,
honestly, former couples sometimes do work out very well. They really feel a big connection to your space. You do get to know their personality pretty well during that planning process. Oftentimes, you know, they're younger, they might not, it is a hard job if you have kids in a family to work Saturdays and Fridays and Sundays, noon to like midnight, right? That would be really hard for me to do all the time, especially like little kid age. That'd be hard on anyone. So, you know, if they're free having kids or something like that, that can work out really well. And then also like posting it on Instagram, because you are going to reach that large audience. And coordinators, if you have a coordinator, you can reach out to them, someone you like working with, although sometimes that does get a bit tricky if you work together. You know, you're kind of crossing things over. So it can make things tricky if it doesn't work out in the venue manager position. It can make it tricky later on.
that makes sense. Who else do you have on your team? You mentioned your venue managers. Who else do you have who helps support the venue there?
Me and my husband.
I love it. Well, you said security though. So are there like setup and tear down people?
We do always provide security for events. So we've got like 3 or 4 guys. They kind of rotate based on their schedules. We really don't ever have very many issues. I think being our security is a pretty cush job. But I'd always just rather pay for one and not need them than need them and not have someone there. So they very rarely have to really do anything. I'd say most of the time they're going around telling people to go smoke in the designated smoking area. That's the bulk of their job. And they'll kind of help us give a hand with cleanup at the end of the night. So luckily they really don't have to do too much. And then we also have, other companies, like we are on 20 acres. We have a landscaping company that we love. We have a cleaning crew that comes in to clean the buildings and help with our layouts and things like that. So that takes a huge load off of us. There's no way I'd be able to flip the venue space when we have like Friday, Saturday, Sunday weddings. I would not be able to do that. That'd be very difficult. So, they help support us. But as direct Walnut Hill employees, it's me and my husband, venue managers and security right now.
Awesome. Did it take you a little while to hire some of those vendors, or that was kind of already happening because the property was, intact, the buildings were already there, and so you kind of already needed to have someone, and pre-wedding, those vendors were already in place?
Yeah, we got the cleaning crew pretty early on. Originally, we had some local kids that helped us, not kids, they were teenagers, helping us with layouts and things like that. As much as I love them, sometimes teenage boys are not always the most reliable. So one day I just asked my cleaning crew, It's like, would you want to do the layouts if I sent them to you, notes and things? Do you have enough staff? Could you handle that? Because they were already going, if we had a Friday wedding, they'd go Saturday morning to clean the houses and everything. So they were already there. So it kind of worked out well that if they're already there, and if they wanted to and had the staff, they could just flip over the layout. And she was like, yeah, I'd love to. So we started doing that, and it has worked out really nice and made all the operations a lot smoother. So every week I just send her all the layouts for the weekend, and they get to handle it all for us.
Amanda, I love that. That's very creative, because you think about it, like the cleaning team as well, like they have all the supplies to clean things. So if a chair needs to be cleaned or something is a little stained or something like that, I mean, they're very well equipped to handle that.
Yeah, it worked out very well for all of us. And I mean, they like doing it, it's just very consistent work for them too, and their company and all their staff. So it's worked out really well. And it just made sense. They're already there. Why am I having two, different sets of people and having to schedule two different sets of people? It didn't make sense. And sometimes I would end up having to go do it, which is not fun.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I've totally been there.
Yeah. The hardest thing to staff was we also provide ceremony chairs, and which not all venues do. And we do the setup for that. That was the hardest thing to staff. Our cleaning crew couldn't really do that. We have like multiple ceremony locations throughout the property. So we like hook up our chairs to like our golf cart to move them around. They get set up around noon usually, and then have to be like kind of packed up and moved like every day. It's a lot. That was very hard to staff because it is very odd hours and it's not a lot of work. So that one was a little hard. So that one I finally did find just the best people in the world to do, and I love them. I don't pay them anything.
That's huge. Yeah, the odd hours on the setup is very tricky. We've got two properties that are kind of in more remote locations that we manage, and the finding consistent personnel who do have attention to detail, because like if you're going to have kind of a half moon shape on the chairs or more of a square or rectangle or circle we've had. I mean, we've done a couple different varieties of chair layouts. You give someone the layout, and if they're not following the directions, the coordinator shows up and it's like, what is this? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And
yeah, our guys are so good. They get out like a string. They are making that thing perfectly straight. They do the best job. They're so nice too.
That's huge. Talk to me a little bit about your marketing now. Let's kind of leapfrog back to that. You did Wedding Wire in the Knot first for the first year, canceled them in COVID. When you came back and when you were kind of ramping back up, what were you primarily using as your marketing? And then maybe what were other marketing avenues that you were using as well?
Yeah, so I decided that, we should take some of that money that we were spending over at the Knot and Wedding Wire and reinvest it into our own website. So we hired someone to help us with the back end in the SEO to really kind of bump us up on Google and things like that, because I could see when we were getting leads, it does help track where our leads are coming from. So I could see that we were getting the vast majority of all of our leads from Google. That's clearly where people are going to look for wedding venues first. And that's where they were coming in from. So I wanted to put our money there to improve that and generate even more from that avenue. And I do think that really helped. And it cost less, to be honest. It was really like this initial investment, and then you are getting just month over month returns on it versus this huge monthly chunk you're paying to an advertising website. And the second you stop paying them, all of that's going to go away.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever feel like there is a maybe irrational fear that if you stop, like for Wedding Wire in the Knot, for example, that you're going to, like the whole venue's gonna, your leads are gonna be entirely cut off or something like that, and then once you do it, you don't really feel the impact as much because people are shopping around to multiple, websites and more than just those two?
Yes, I think that that's a really big concern with kind of anything that you're currently advertising with, whether it's a magazine or a website. You get really concerned that if you take it away, something's going to happen because it's, Google and the internet, it's just weird. I don't even understand any of it. Or how it all works. It's like the Instagram algorithm, right? We're all trying to figure it out. How do you get things to go viral? And you never can figure it out. It's luck of the draw. And I think that that same fear happens with any kind of thing you're advertising with. And there is just this constant pressure about leads and bookings in our industry because this is not a passive industry. You are not getting repeat clients. You have to constantly be selling, working on the business and improving and keep booking. You can have a fantastic year, but it doesn't matter. The next year, it just resets. Every year I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm looking at 2024 and we only have 6 booked. And I freak out internally. And I'm like, this happened to you last year. Stop. It's going to be okay. But, it just gets it seems daunting every year to have to book 75 weddings or however many your number is that makes you comfortable and happy. Because hopefully they're not coming back. I want all my couples to be happily married. And even if something unfortunately does happen, they're probably not going to get remarried at your venue.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
So true. They're not going to go back for round 2.
Yeah, probably not. We get recommendations. A lot of times we have a lot of couples that send their friends to us, which is the highest form of flattery I ever get. But just in general, you just have to work a lot to get new clients in. So, and there's always a new venue popping up here or there. So there's a lot of pressure on you, and it's not for the faint of heart. I remember when we started, an owner of a pretty popular venue in the area told me that you're doing really well if you book 25% of your tours, which means that if you fail 75% of the time, you're doing really well, which is a little depressing that you're doing well if you're rejected 75% of the time. And that rejection does get to you a little bit. Sometimes there will be a week or 2 weeks where I do a bunch of tours and I think they've gone really well. I felt like I really connected. I love the couples and I just don't hear anything back. And then I'll have a random 3 days where I book like 5 weddings. And I can't tell you what happened or what it was that made, the difference there. And that's okay. But it does sometimes not hurt. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's you have so much care and so much passion behind your venue, and you are so excited about it. And then you try to convey that excitement and try to transfer that belief to the couples that are touring. And sometimes they grab it and sometimes they get it. And sometimes 75% of the time, right? Like they don't get it. And then it's like crickets and you're like, and it can impact your excitement for sure. But then you look around and you're like, oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. And then you're excited again. So just so I have a clear understanding, so you're not on Wedding Wire and The Knot, but you're on Instagram, Facebook. Do you do any TikTok? Have you got on the whole TikTok train yet? I know.
I have a TikTok. There's nothing on it.
Fair. I like it. You signed up. Hey, that was the first step. I like it.
I pretty much use TikTok to annoy my best friend and send her TikToks back and forth constantly. That's its primary function right now. She's on it. She's much better than I am. She's a photographer and she's had like a bunch of TikToks go viral. I'm like, how are you doing this? I don't understand. My face is on her TikTok sometimes.
Amazing. Well, so I'm curious though, because with the 75 weddings that you've done this year, you've got 70 plus weddings booked for 2023 already. You've got a couple booked in 2024. And that's strong. I mean, that sounds like, a strong amount of bookings that you have. And even if you want to, do a couple more and get to 80 or 90, I mean, that's huge, and you have that time to do that. What do you attribute that to? Like, what do you attribute getting all of those bookings? Because if it's not TikTok and it's, you're not on Wedding Wire and they're not, what do you think it is?
Oh gosh. I do think that, getting them to the venue is obviously the first step. So I do think that investment we did in our website and our SEO really helped to get the leads coming in. And then after that, I don't try and sell too much.
Tell me about that.
When people come to the venue, I want to get to know them first. And then I just kind of want to show them. I show them what we have to offer. I take them through the whole property, explain the different spaces and what I personally, think are best uses based on my personal preference or their time of year and things like that. But I personally never enjoyed pushy sales tactics. I might lose some bookings because of this. I'm not great at the follow-up because I don't want to bother people. I don't like to send 3, 4, 5 emails after a tour, like, hey, do you have any extra questions? I'll send one or something like that, just checking in on them, seeing if they have any questions that they have for me. But after that, I kind of like to leave people be. If we were a good fit for them, they'll reach out. If we weren't, that's okay too.
Yeah, and you don't want them at your venue if they're not gonna love it. Yeah,
it's your wedding day. I want people to be happy. I don't ever want anyone to book us and regret it. And I also try and be really honest and transparent during all of our tours. I try and give a lot of general wedding advice, and I'm really just upfront with policies during the tour verbally, which I think is important. As we know, people do not always read the contracts. So I try and hit the key points during that tour. I try and put a lot of them in our information packet I send even prior to the tour. And then, if people ask me a question, I just answer it very honestly. And if they're like, oh, well, why is that a policy? I just tell them the truth. I think that there's a lot of gatekeeping that sometimes happens in this industry about vendors and policies and things like that. I don't love that. Weddings are really complicated, especially when you're at the venue stage. People feel like they have 10 million steps in front of them that they still have to do. Budgeting is super hard because those online budgeting tools are completely inaccurate. So I think giving people as much honesty and transparency as you can from the get-go is just going to set them up for success and me up for success. So why not? If they tell me their guest count and they ask me what a realistic budget is, I tell them the realistic budget. And if that puts me out of their price range, that is fine as well. I do not want someone to end up going venue poor. That's not fun for anyone. They're going to get stressed out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm going to get stressed out.
Yeah, exactly. And they're going to bring that energy to the wedding day because everything's going to be paid prior to. Yeah.
Yeah. As much as a wedding is a very important, great, fantastic day to celebrate, it is a day. It is a day in your life. And your life is much more important. And I certainly don't want anyone to have to, take out loans or go into debt because of their wedding day. Mm-hmm. That's definitely not why I got into the industry.
Well, and that's really cool to hear. When you talk about budgets with your couples, what is kind of an average wedding at your property cost?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is obviously going to be your guest count. Mm-hmm. And that's why I always advise people that is going to affect your budget the most. A 50-person wedding versus a 200-person wedding is a huge difference. And there are tons of factors that can obviously change that overall budget, as we all know. You can spend all the money in the world on flowers if you want to. And And please do, it's gorgeous. But for me, it's like if you're looking at 150 is pretty common, I would say, number. So if you have 150 guests, I would say for 2023, a good budget would probably be around like $40,000 to $50,000 probably. You can go higher, you can go lower, and it all depends. A lot depends on like alcohol you're serving too, plated dinner, non-plated, what your protein selection is, which caterer you select. We have a lot of different price points in our caterer list too. So there are a lot of factors. That's a healthy one where I feel like you'll be okay. You're not going to get stressed out.
Do you, so at your venue, it sounds like it is blank canvas enough where they can bring in their own catering. Is there anything on the vendor list that is kind of like a locked category that you don't allow anyone to go off of the list that you have?
Yes, so we don't allow anyone to go off of our catering or coordinator list. So we have about 8 caterers and 8 coordinators, so they select from that. But I really, especially for caterers, try to make a lot of price points, a lot of different cuisines and stuff like that for everyone. Those are the 2 that I found. The first year we didn't have those lists. And I really found that those were really crucial to the overall flow of the day, making sure there are no hiccups at last month, and that everything was really taken care of. It is a big property as well. And knowing kind of for the coordinator side, knowing the best way to have the events flow. And if we're, moving the ceremony from, let's say, like our open air chapel over to our covered pavilion, what's the best flow for that and how to get the wedding party there, things like that. The logistics of it is very important. So they all know that. They know the property very well. So everything goes smoothly. And then we do have everyone go through one rental company because that just makes it easier on everyone. It usually also helps save money on deliveries too, because then they're not having to come back on Saturday night to pick it up because the different rental companies come Sunday morning.
Yeah, it's a good point. When you have kind of that consistent go-to person, not only do they get to learn the property more, but then, depending on who it is too, sometimes you can give them special access to the property. I know with one of our properties, we are able to do that and the company can come right on, they can pick it up. There's kind of a designated area. So it does make a lot of sense if you can find kind of an ally in your local market.
Yes.
Talk to me about, we talked about the team, we talked about the marketing. What are some things that maybe you struggled with early on that you now feel like you've become better at? Talk to me maybe about stuff that you feel like you do better than anyone else or better than the surrounding competition. And then I'd love to know, as you're thinking about venue ownership now, you have a couple years experience, you've obviously gone through COVID. I'm curious, how are you continuing to grow? What are you looking at as kind of like areas of opportunity for you to continue growing in 2023, 2024 and beyond?
Yeah. So I think one of the hardest things for me in the beginning, I had never been anyone's boss. I never managed anyone. I had never really been anyone's boss ever. That was really a huge learning curve for me to have employees at all. And then the vendor relationships are also they're very interesting. There aren't a lot of industries where you have the same dynamic where I am not their boss. They own their own companies. Often they have their own bosses or they are their own boss, yet I do own the venue where they're coming into. So there is a level of me semi being their boss.
Totally. You have a layer of control and yeah, absolutely.
So it's very complicated. And I also am a person who's very averse to confrontation. I don't enjoy it. I'd rather just avoid it at all costs, to my own detriment. So learning to really speak up about things earlier on, deal with any kind of even small conflict with a vendor or something from the get-go and just resolve it was something I had to kind of learn to deal with. It just gives me anxiety. So that was definitely a new one for me. And same with employees. I've never had to give like a performance review or correct someone before. That was always me getting those things. So that was a new dynamic to have to figure out. I never thought I would own a company and be someone's boss or manager. So it was definitely a big learning curve. And then setting those healthy boundaries. I think that is something very important for all venue owners to learn how to do early on. This industry will cause burnout very quickly. Events are long, they're the weekends, and you work all week doing emails and back end stuff for the company. So making sure that you are setting healthy boundaries and sticking to your own side of the contract, even if it means you're telling a client no, in a polite way, is okay, because you have to protect your own time and energy as well, so that you can keep going and do your job well. I used to say yes to a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have, and it caused a lot of physical and emotional burnout. And I just had to start being really honest with my couples, like, no, I'm sorry, I can't let you set up early unless you want to rent the time, because we have to have a staff member there. That staff member was usually me. So I was there for 4 extra hours for free, away from my kids, things like that. And when I tell couples that now, I'm just completely honest. They're like, oh, yeah, well, that makes sense. They don't want me to be away from my kids for hours, when I'm not really supposed to be. They understand that. They get it. They're empathetic to it. Once you kind of explain it, they're like, yeah, don't worry about it. I totally get it. So setting those boundaries and just telling them the reason why, if necessary, I think is, really important, because they understand that we're people. We do get to get personal with these couples. So, relaying that in a way that humanizes it. And I'm not saying this is a corporation that wants your money. I'm saying it because I need to see my kid's soccer game because I've missed 5.
Yeah.
They understand.
Yeah. And I think the venue space is very personal in that way, where there is that level of expectation, especially when someone's looking for an experience. They're looking for, to be able to stay on site, or they're looking to, have a really incredible experience. A lot of the places that they're going are not, corporate ballrooms or some of these different things. And so they understand a lot of times, with an owner operated type thing, like you're asking someone to give up their nights and weekends and things like that. So the expectation there.
Yeah.
But I love that, like defining your boundaries. Tell me about the things that you feel like you just like crush it at. Like, why do people get married at Walnut Hill? Like, what's the best part of that?
I think that I think that it's really just unique in general. The fact that we do have 20 acres and we take really good care of our property, our landscaping, our landscapers come out every week, and we keep it pretty immaculate. And then the fact that we do have multiple ceremony locations and they all have a pretty unique look to them. We had one of our brides this year who got married with us. 2 of her bridesmaids were former Walnut Hill brides. So all 3 of them got married with us, and my venue manager, Bailey, was also working that day. So 4 Walnut Hill brides on property, all 4 of them had different ceremony spots.
Wow.
Which I think is pretty cool.
Wow.
I don't think that there are a lot of places that can do that. So it was nice. Like, they all got married there. These 3 friends all got married at the same place, but all of their wedding photos look different. And you can't do that a lot. I was born and raised in Raleigh. I've been to a lot of weddings here, and often if you go to the same venue, the weddings feel pretty similar and look the same. So I do find it really cool that our space can really be transformed to fit what you need. I don't think that there's a lot of places that do kind of that indoor outdoor feel the way we do. Our white barn, one wall can completely slide open. We have giant sliding barn doors. So it opens up and you get a view of our patio. You can go out onto our patio and you get our pond in the background. So that's also really fun. I don't think a lot of people don't have that.
That's so cool. I love the ceremony, the multiple ceremony option, because you can have, like you said, 4 different weddings and have 4 different sets of pictures. And most of the pictures that are coming from the reception side are like, you're getting shots of the cake, or getting shots of dancing, or some things that are kind of like not as much in context, or like table setups or things like that. But there's so much variety that you can do with that. Not as much that you can do with a ceremony site. I mean, it has to be like the location itself. So
yeah. And just having so much land is nice, because during cocktail hour, if you have to finish up all those portraits, I do not like being looked at. And I definitely don't want people staring at me when I'm having to do these kind of like awkward poses, right? It's not that fun. We have so much property that usually the cocktail hour is happening over here and your guests are over here, and y'all can be a full acre away. Taking your photos, no one's staring at you, seeing you. You do have like that privacy to take those photos without everyone looking at you, which is really nice. And then we have the 2 separate houses on opposite sides of the property to get ready, and people have plenty of space to take photos, not accidentally see each other. A lot of places don't have that either. So it ended up being a nice setup. I tell people often that it was half careful planning and half dumb luck.
I like that. Half careful planning, half dumb luck. Well, tell me then, what does the future look like for you guys? Are you kind of moving towards, I know you said working less on the property yourself, you'll be there hands-on, definitely, but are you looking to kind of pull back a little bit more, have more of a team that runs things? What does the next couple of years look like for you and how you're growing?
Yeah, so I definitely want to work on, giving a few more things to my husband and COO to take over. But one of the biggest things we'll be doing is 2024, we're going to be doing in-house bar and getting that full liquor license, which is going to be just, a big weight off of couples. It is really hard to figure out what you need for your bar, how much to buy, things like that. So we'll just handle all of it for them. So we will definitely be growing our staff a lot once we start doing that as well. We'll have bartenders, bar managers. We'll be taking care of all the ordering and different things like that. So we'll definitely be taking on a lot more employees as well.
You mentioned your husband and COO, and I'm curious about that because I work with my wife. She's our COO. She helps on the podcast. She runs the podcast, basically. I just show up and interview folks.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. So, and I know that we've been married about 10 years as well, actually. And I know that there are times that it could be very tricky working with your spouse. There are times that it's easy, as much as you don't want to, it's easy to kind of cross the professional stuff and the struggles and the different challenges that are happening over there, and then it comes right to the kitchen dinner table, right? How do you handle working with him? Was that a natural shift that happened? Has it been easy? I mean, people always say don't work with family, but I haven't necessarily experienced that. What's your take on working with family?
I think that working with him actually has been pretty easy. We have really good communication. I mean, there's always times where a coworker or your husband's going to drive you, a little batty. So it's going to happen every once in a while. But overall, no, it's been nice. I think one of the hardest things one hard thing I already mentioned was just giving up some control. And unfortunately for us, our plan was in January and February, which is kind of our off season this last year, is when I was going to kind of train him up on some things. During that time, though, North Carolina had a rule that if one kid in daycare got COVID, class was canceled for 10 days. And that happened a lot at our daycare in January and February. I think our daughter was out 45 days in January and February.
Wow. So most of those 2 months. Oh my God.
Right.
Okay.
So I wasn't, he had to watch her a lot because I had to, do the business side of things. So I didn't get a ton of time to train him up on as much. And then weddings just happened and it was just kind of go. So we're looking forward to this off season, getting to do a little bit more of that and get some more of that kind of all set up and figure out everything we want him to kind of take over. We just kind of had to sporadically like teach some different things. So he took over like contracts and invoicing and all that stuff for me, but there's still some more stuff once now we have more time. And then I think it is just a little bit, like I said, about how you get rejected so much. Now that we work together, this is it for our family, right? And I know that people aren't like rejecting me, but sometimes I find it hard to tell him like, oh, someone didn't show up for a tour, or no, I didn't hear back from that person. I don't know why. It feels like almost like a personal failing, and it's like, or I'm failing my family somehow. And it's almost like hard to share that. Because it's like, if this fails, that's it. Like, this is what feeds our kids, So it definitely created, I think, a bit more pressure. It felt on me. Like, this was a company that I thought would be my part-time job. My husband had a very good job. He was by far the primary breadwinner in our relationship, our entire marriage and life together. So it was a big shift. And to have that kind of pressure then now fall on me. And when it is a job that is a bit up in the air with your income and things like that. So yeah, that was one thing that is a little bit different to have to feel that I never really felt before. Mm-hmm. Even in past years, it's like, well, yeah, there's pressure, but I don't know, we have this really good health insurance through my husband's job and he has a good income. So I don't know, if I have a bad year, we'll be okay. Like 2020.
Yeah.
No money. I made no money. But he still had his job. So it was okay. And now it's like, if I have a bad year, we all have a bad year.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes so much sense. And that's kind of the crazy part about entrepreneurship, I guess. And you start to learn, or you start to figure out like that is the scariest thing, but then that's also the biggest blessing. And as you get, more time under the, time doing it, time working on it. It was interesting. You said something before about the staff and not having staff and not giving performance reviews. And you were like, I was always the one who was getting the performance reviews. And it's kind of like, that's another one of those things that's kind of part of the process. Like you're realizing you're probably not going to ever get a performance review ever again.
No, the only performance reviews we get is reviews from our couples.
Yeah.
Which are so hard to get. And I do think that is one reason vendors want them so bad a little bit. I mean, there's multiple reasons why we reach out for, reviews. They are very good for, booking new clients. They're good for your website and your SEO, but also it is really hard. I sit in my office by myself most of the time. I'm not in an office with other people. There aren't a lot of people to give me any kind of feedback. The only way I can know I'm doing well is clients, that had their wedding that tell me they're happy, they leave a review, or I'm booking well. So I'm like, okay, something's going right. That's really all I know. So that kind of feedback from clients, good or bad, whenever I send a review request, I'm also like, and if you can't give us a good review, please let me know, if there's anything we can improve upon.
Totally. And that's huge, because then, for next year, for other couples, things like that.
I always want to know if there was something we could have done better. And even if they're like, everything was great, we're still going to give you a 5-star review, but there was this one little thing, or if there was a vendor that I recommended that wasn't maybe up to par, I also want to know that, because it does reflect on us as well. Mm-hmm.
And the guests and people don't know, that it's not you. Yeah. Entirely. Cool. Well, Amanda, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing, about your process starting this venue, and then, your crazy second year, and just kind of the whole process that you've been through so far and how you guys are growing. It's really exciting and inspiring to hear, where you've come and where you're going. And I'm excited for you guys as you continue to expand, and we'll definitely have to stay in touch. If someone is interested in getting a hold of you, they're interested in checking out your venue, is there a especially good place to reach you? Instagram or maybe your website? What's the best place for people to contact you?
Oh yeah. So our website is walnuthillnc.com. So that's all of our information, and our contact page will go to me. And then info@walnuthillnc.com also goes to me. And then the Instagram also goes to me. So yeah, pretty much anything will go to me.
Very cool. Very cool. So anyone listening or watching, if you want to talk to Amanda, just contact the venue and she'll be there. She'll answer your inquiry. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been really nice chatting. And for everyone watching or listening, if you are listening, check out the YouTube. It is broken down a little bit differently, and we have all sorts of different visual content, which I know that you said you saw some clips. Were you seeing some of those clips on Instagram, or was it on YouTube?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
On Instagram.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for being here. It was fun chatting.
Thank you.